Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Ми надзвичайно вдячні вам.
Good afternoon, dear friends. We are grateful that you had come to this briefing. Today we would like to discuss the third anniversary of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU. We would like to discuss the achievements and challenges. We have prepared press releases which will be disseminated after the press briefing. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to Mr. Artem Sytnyk. Good afternoon, dear journalists. So we have not been meeting for a long period of time, and now it's a good moment to discuss what's going on. Recently, there was the third date when the president had signed the decree about NABU creation, but only in December that year we started our first investigation. I think it's a good pretext to review what is done and what we can do to strengthen the efficiency of our work. Before starting to speak on this topic, I would like to thank to those who contributed to the NABU creation. First of all, I would like to thank to our MPs who supported creation of this institution, which allows to carry out independent investigation. Also, I would like to thank to the civil or public council members of NGOs which assist us in our work. I also would like to thank to the international partners which have been supporting us for 3 years, because without their support we won't be able to survive during these 3 years. The broad support from NGOs and public and support from our international partners allowed us to survive through these 3 years. So what we have managed to do, what our main achievements, we managed to establish a new professional team, which is an achievement not only for the law enforcement agencies but for Ukraine in general. This new team was formed independently of the former law enforcement agencies. The general staff is 700 people, and as of now we have 650 field vacancies and 50 non-field vacancies. Out of them, 250 members of staff are professional investigations, 200 of them are professional enforcement officers, and the rest are from the back office. And I believe that after May holidays we will announce the 4th stage of our professional contest for filling in vacancies for professional investigators. Of course, under current conditions, it's not so easy to combat corruption in this country, and that's why I encourage all decent people, diligent people, to participate in it. So our biggest treasure is the staff, and the contest for filling in vacancies is one of our main principles. Recently we have analyzed that we received around 40,000 applications to fill in vacancies, which is approximately 50 persons per 50 applicants per one vacancy. And I believe that we have selected the best. During the first 3 years, all our employers contributed to the mission and values. Of course, we were subject to material and to psychological pressure. We were tested with proposed bribes up to up to 500,000, 800,000 hryvnia. The biggest achievement of NABU since 2016 is the fact that we finally had shaken the casta impunity of the top officials. Thus, we managed to do what the law enforcement agencies in Ukraine did not manage to do during the previous 20 years. We started to bring to responsibility top officials, and today this is perceived as it should be like this, but at the very beginning, it was quite a novelty. Some 4-5 years ago, it won't be possible to carry out investigation about the head of the fiscal service, state tax service, the state auditor service. All those top officials were charged in top corruption, big corruption, and now their cases are filed to court. As of early March this year, the proofs collected by NABU and SAP allows us to to bring charges against 200 people, and 160 people remains under suspicion. There's suspects. I would like to remind you the recent events, a case against one of the leaders of the regional prosecutor's office. 3 days ago, a judge of one of the capital courts was detained, and then one of SBU top officials was detained several years ago. The biggest our concern is to destroy the corrupt schemes. When we liquidated Anishchenko schemes and look at the practical figures before the liquidation of the scheme and after liquidation, although sometimes we announce suspicion or we even prove the breach, but those who are charged, they remain in place and they remain in positions. I believe that working together, all anti-corruption workers had reached the non-return point, and the non-return point is the anti-corruption court. We want to establish such a court to take into account the recommendations of Venice Commission. If this court would be established, and I strongly believe that this anti-corruption court will be established. We will see the progress in hearings of the cases that we filed to courts. Unfortunately, as of now, all our filed cases remain without movement, and this allows people to blame us that we are inactive. The third major achievement of NABU is the fact that NABU enjoys one of the biggest levels of trust in Ukraine and big support from our international partners. This is very helpful for our foreign partners because quite often corruption is transnational, and that schemes, they do not finish in Ukraine. And some witnesses who were involved in the cases, in the investigation cases of NABU, some traces go abroad, and around 50 requests for international support and international involvement were applied to foreign states. So for us now, it's important to make good use of that credit that we have got from society. So what's next? We try to analyze our work, our experience, to understand what are our strengths and weaknesses, and to build up our tactics for the future. Quite often, hearing criticism from our international partners, we applied for technical assistance to the United States with a request to provide us with auditing experience, and this technical assistance worked in the period between October and December, and the assessment report was produced, and U.S. Ambassador Yovanovich and the EU Commissioner Mingarelli had signed this report and directed it to the Parliament of Ukraine. This report is not an audit report. This was an independent assessment carried out by international partners in Ukraine. Full version of this report today will be published on NABU website. Of course, we have already at our disposal three major findings of this report. And I can tell you that experts suggested to improve some internal procedures of the Bureau because of the high speed of the organization establishment. We missed something, and now there is big space for improvement, for computerization, etc. About challenges. Challenges are well known, and it was again reconfirmed by the findings of the review. First was the right to make a decision about wiretappings, and our Polish colleagues, for example, are very much surprised why this draft law has stuck in the parliament. Then creation of the anti-corruption court. No comments about this topic. I believe that finally, having observed tough position of our foreign partners, we can expect from the parliament that it will finally pass this law and allow us to create a working institution. the NABU assessment was carried out alongside with the SAP assessment too, because we cannot be separated from SAP, and we were checked against non-partiality, independent, political independence, etc. At the same time, the final assessment of the work efficiency remains unfinished unless we have the first court verdicts, anti-corruption court verdicts in the corruption cases. That's why I would like to thank to our international partners for their evaluation, and once again, I would like to emphasize we are not scared with any audit. We believe that the audit is a way to strengthen our efficiency and to improve our internal work. And now about yesterday's events. Yesterday we detained an SBU officer from the Kyiv branch. It is related to the operation discovered by K unit officers in December 2017, and yesterday's events are connected to the December events. This SBU officer got $47,000 from people who received fake residence documents, residence ITs for permanent residence in Ukraine. Instead of revealing those people, instead of exposing them to possible responsibility, instead of pointing out to the officers of migration service who contributed to the violation of the law, he issued these fake documents to 3,000 people, and earlier he received 11,500. Yesterday he has got 36,000 US dollars. Then we found some explosive substances, some drug substances. So the big question for me, why K department wanted to prevent us from interfering, to disrupt our investigation. Yesterday we had demonstrated that K department was interested in disrupting our investigation. And we have proofs that leadership of this department was involved. Then we keep speaking a lot about SBU as an institution. I have huge respect to Mr. Rizak, but disagree. But I agree with the statement that SBU should be involved into the activities, but not to produce fake documents.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ukrainian news. Artem Sergeyevich, I have two questions. In the media, there is information that NABU will serve as a suspicion to Omelian concerning illegal assets and improper information that he provided, and when this charge will be served. And Yuri Lutsenko says that there is disciplinary proceedings against other persons. So maybe you want to prosecute Kholodnitsky about the Minister of Infrastructure. This is not true. The investigation continues, but it is difficult to say what will be the results. So, Prosecutor General said that he does not exclude this criminal responsibility, but such comments. This is the pressure on the investigative group that works on this case. I can only confirm what Prosecutor General said yesterday, that investigation continues, and about criminal or procedural process. So this is about what decisions will be taken, and these decisions should be legal. So I have several questions. First, about Ms. Kurchak, and we know that the detectives found confirmation that her family and herself, they used the cars that were not mentioned in her declaration. And about, do you have information that there is some investigation against you because of the flat you've got, and why this flat was provided to you and for this money, and also what is the continuation of the case about Kholodnitsky, and about the last case. It is connected with the previous one about Ms. Krychak. I can say that her position and my position, the charges are served only by the Prosecutor General, so this case will depend not from the detectives but only on Prosecutor General. And about my flat, I believe that if there were some violations, then they would serve a charge, but there is no such a charge. And procedural law, it envisages that an investigative group can act, and in the last case you've mentioned about the work of the group, there were some facts when we detained people who proposed some bribes to detectives, and also the same department investigated the case about the case concerning SAP. So we have some cliches, we have conflicts or unions, but we do not have either of them. There are responsibilities of NABU head, and we do not create some unions, and we do not have personal conflicts, because this is not professional. Ilya Lukash, 24th channel. So maybe Gennady Trukhanov's case is really difficult. There are 3 cases against him, and the question is why there is information that this case on airport is disrupted, and what about the second case about him, and do you support or do you reject the case that the money was siphoned away with the investment company Ross? So some cases are disrupted, and this is really difficult for me, because if there is no assessment and people say that the cases are disrupted, this is not correct. So Krayan case is will be sent to court, and the detectives they need several days for carrying out some actions, and if nothing changes in May, this case will be in court. And about the airport, the situation is an old one, and there was another mayor then, and they investigate this case not only concerning Mr. Trukhanov. There are other people involved in the case, and the detectives, I won't hide this information, they start the procedure of serving the charge, but this is also about the future of the airport. You know that there was a case filed in the court, and this airport about returning of this airport to communal property, but this airport remains in the property of the beneficiaries. So this case has a criminal component, and also now we consider the opportunity to file the case, and the materials are prepared for filing this case to court to return this airport. And about international assets and siphoning assets out the country. So we deal with this case, and my last visit to London was connected with the intensification of our cooperation with Great Britain including concerning this case, and the speed of this investigation will be connected with the international cooperation. So I cannot tell you about the search you've mentioned, but Mr. Trukhanov, we deal with his case, and all the cases you've mentioned, we continue to investigate them. I have two questions. Why the Sytnyk case and the Kholodnitsky case, why do you establish wiretapping in Kholodnitsky's case, and also about Naumenko and his participation? And you said that you if Kholodnitsky stays in his position, what will be what will happen to investigation? So this is a myth that the investigation will be paralyzed. I brought examples about constructive cooperation between detectives and the investigators, so it is not connected with some officials of NABU or SAP. As I know, this information is not true. That in there was an investigation. Unfortunately, I am limited in the. I cannot provide you comments on this, and there was decision of the court, and the detective of NABU, who was in the investigative group, he provided this to the information to NABU. And about further cooperation, you know that results speak for themselves, and we believe that the decisions of prosecutors and detectives that they will be legal, and the cooperation between them will be fruitful. So, Alexei Kaval, Hong Kong Channel Phoenix, and about your meeting in London, what information did you ask about whether this information can contribute to the investigation of case of Trukhanov? We have more than 20 different requests that are sent to Great Britain, and now this process was intensified, and I hope we will get this data soon. I do not believe that these cases should be united in one case, because it will be difficult to deal with this case in court, because they are not deeply connected, and I believe that it is necessary to provide separate assessment to Krayan and to the airport case. So we had information long time ago about real estate that was not put on declaration, and this information was provided by the BBC. And these documents, they should be provided to NABU, and we will use them as evidence. Artem Sergeyevich, you've said that you are sure about the evidence in each case, and why Rosenblatt is a victim in the case, and the media has information that the Nishinka case is delayed because international partners do not provide information timely, and if it is so, why it is so? It is not true. About Nishinka's case, there was a decision of Spanish court about his extradition, but it is not came into effect because there is an appeal against this decision. And I told you about the Nishinka case. There are several cases, and in NABU there is a case concerning Nishinka himself, and there is a decision about trial in absentia, and this case will be brought to court. So, and what was your first question? As I know, this is done because of court decision. He was established as a victim of the case, and in this case, it was clearly shown in the video, and I have nothing to add to this.
The only thing I can add is that some MPs had applied to Constitutional Court, but I believe that the proofs collected by an officer undercover are rather convincing. The case itself is already finished. Sergei Lektor, Union. What about another criminal case which had been investigated before NABU about disclosed information about pre-court investigation and about another investigation related to you, that you had got an apartment, a flat, unlawfully. Whether this is blackmail, whether this is a method of pressure, I have already answered this question. I do not know exactly the number of cases against me, whether they are open, whether they are closed, but do you really believe that they can manipulate with me? Whether we have changed our policy, whether we have changed our approach to the investigation. Thank you. Sergei Berezhnoy, Liganet. The first question. Your relations with NAZK, whether the change in NAZK leadership will result in the change of your relations. And about Dina Pimakhova, whether this will continue, this story will continue. The yesterday's events will continue. Of course, the yesterday's events will change the future scenario of this investigation, but undoubtedly it will continue. About NAZK, I never had complaints against NAZK. The only thing is that we had been waiting long for materials from them, and we never got them, and that's why now our analysts continue our work with declarations, and many times we suggested them to take our experience of processing declarations, although we had prepared even workstations for them in our premises, allowing us to work together. So I still have hope that new leader of NAZK will allow us full access to the e-declarations, and that we finally will be able to computerize this process fully. We participated in the contest to fill in the contest related to NABU auditor. Now in our pipeline we have another contest covering around 1,000 judges, and we would like the competition committee, competition board, to have access to our materials that we filed in result of our investigations. News 1. I have several questions. After Anishchenko made his disclosures, what did you do? When we could expect to get some response from the law enforcement? Now our detectives continue our contact with Anishchenko via correspondence. When all those statements were made by Anishchenko some time ago, we started the investigation about bribing MPs, about blackmails, but those disclosures, so-called disclosures that he made, were not specific, without any notions of equipment, of names of MPs, etc. We interrogated him, and again he never mentioned any specific information. We encouraged him to provide us with that, with the materials, and again we have received nothing from him. This investigation case remains open, and we still have been waiting for any information, for any proofs, because based on very general statement we can do nothing. Inter TV channel, we would like to know more about the Amber case. It started with many events. You detained somebody, you expropriated some property, and now we observe that bracelets are removed, etc. So shall we understand this as the end of this case? This is abnormal, and this is the reason why we keep discussing the anti-corruption court. The general scenario today is as follows. We file a case to court. For example, SAP knows that about the case about fiscal service is the most rapid one. We filed the case in December. Why now they are only proceeding with the verdict? It's too slow. Because they have hearings once a month, and this again proves that we should have a separate institution dealing with corrupt cases. For example, in this very case, it looks like they are slowing down all the hearing. They try to make impediments, and actually this is too slow. Quite often I request them to recognize that people is not guilty, but probably they cannot do this, but they create delays and postpone the court proceeding. One judge from Kharkiv was filed to court a very small bribe, but it remains without any movement. This is especially true about very simple, very small cases. Not to mention when it comes to very complicated corruption schemes with involvement of foreign institutions. So anti-corruption court is very much needed. The first judge who will make this verdicts in first anti-corruption cases, he will become the outstanding person in Ukrainian history. Dear colleagues, we have very limited time. Dmitro Volkov, TNK, Ukraine. There are verdicts related to 19 people, but how many people are brought to responsibility and remain imprisoned, either in result of court verdict or who remain in detention? The verdicts which you mentioned, these were verdicts in result of mutual settlement, and they are based on the criminal witnesses. The only case which is outstanding from this general characteristic is about SBU officer from Odessa. In criminal investigation, there is such thing as the rational or as reasonable time limits for investigation. Liganet, whether NABU takes back Trukhanov relations with Volodymyr Sytnyk from Odessa. You were asked not to repeat your questions about Odessa. What I could mention about Odessa, I've already mentioned. 24th TV channel, Anna Kalyuzhna. About Onyshenko. In his tapes, he seriously blamed some people, whether you are waiting for his extradition, whether you will apply for international system. I specifically mean when he mentions President Poroshenko, whether you have opened any case about Новое время involving Pashinsky and Gladkovsky. The investigation is open, and the investigation is carried out. As for Mr. Onyshenko, both ways are acceptable for us, either his extradition or request for international cooperation. My expert opinion is that those tapes or recordings or whatever should be checked based on the forensic procedure basis, and this requires us to get consent for provision of that, for handing over this recordings to us, because as of now we have no his consent, because on those recordings he is also involved as a perpetrator, as a offender. But when we start asking questions about specific people, specific cases, he starts to stepping back and we expect for extradition. Thank you. The last question for today. Alexander Matveychuk, about Martynenko's case. Mykola Martynenko will create delays with the familiarizing with his case. What is the situation, and what is situation with the NABU investigation about Sergei Leshchenko and his $7 million flat? As far as I know about Sergei Leshchenko, the prosecutor's office carried out investigation and closed it. The anti-corruption prosecutors carried out investigation, but at the same time an MP's suspicion should be signed by the prosecutor general. About Melnichenko. I do not recollect for what period the materials are disclosed. I think for 4 months, and next month his lawyers plan to finalize a review of the case, and the case will be submitted to court. Dear colleagues, thank you very much. We're limited with the time, and if you still have questions about anti-corruption bureau work, you may apply our requests for information to us, and we will provide you with possible acceptable answer. I am representing the Forum Nazi newspaper. I'm Josip Zisels. During the last months, some mass media, due to leakage of information from NABU, from SAP, mentioned Hanna Yudkivska, member of the European Court on Human Rights. Whether you have any materials to raise any suspicion in respect of this judge. I know what do you mean. I don't think that it's true information, and I believe that we should study the reasons why this fake information had appeared. I believe that somebody tried to discredit the European Court on Human Rights. There are some investigations related to the officers or top officials from the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine, and probably this fake information about ECHR is related to that investigation. We have no information that ECHR officials or judges are involved into any investigation. So I believe that this was just a provoking case, not based on any optimal information. Thank you, dear colleagues. Those who are interested in our press releases, you can pick up them at the end of this room. Thank you.